Hello, and welcome to Odd Cognition. Last time we talked about psi and what it does. This time we'll talk about Stargate Project, which worked on remote viewing in similar conditions to the Ganzfeld experiments. Stargate Project was the code name for a secret U.S. Army unit established in 1978 at Fort Meade, Maryland by the Defense Intelligence Agency and SRI International, a California contractor, to investigate the potential for psychic phenomena in military and domestic intelligence applications. This project was shut down in 1995 and was later declassified with online access to official CIA documents starting in 2017. It's interesting to note that there is no question of whether Stargate Project existed. It operated for almost 20 years with a maximum staff of 22 members. Many of those same staff have come forward since the project's closure to tell their stories. The project's purpose, to investigate psychic phenomena, is not disputed either. The millions put into funding for the project are also not disputed. It is a fact. There is clear documentation that the U.S. military, 1. thought psychic phenomena were important enough to explore, 2. for 18 years, 3. at an approximate cost of $20 million. The only thing disputed is the effectiveness of remote viewing, the main psychic technique practiced. While personnel such as Hal Puthoff, Ingo Swann, Joseph McGonigal, David Morehouse, and Ed Dames all came forward claiming that the experiments were successful and helpful to the military, skeptics point to the money they made off of their books, radio interviews, and even the movie Men Who Stare at Goats, which is based on a humorous representation of Stargate Project. Money certainly adds an extra layer of scrutiny to any story which relies on credibility. But there is one session, which I've linked below, that I think highlights many of the problems with skepticism here. On May 27, 1984, 6 years after Stargate was founded, an unknown, but claimed by Joseph McGonigal to be himself, remote viewer was requested to view a set of coordinates. Only these coordinates were on Mars 1 million years ago. The viewer did not have any information about the coordinates until after the session ended, and I will now read verbatim a small portion of the remote viewing directly from the CIA documentation. There are two people talking here, the handler who guides the viewer and the viewer. Tell me about the ones who sleep through the storms. Very tall, again, very large people, but they're thin. They look thin because of their height, and they dress like in, oh hell, it's like real light silk, but it's not flowing type of clothing. It's like cut to fit. Move close to them and ask them to tell you about themselves. They're ancient people. They're dying. It's past their time or age. Tell me about this. They're very philosophic about it. They're looking for a way to survive, and they just can't seem to get their way out. They can't seem to find their way out. So they're hanging on while they look or wait for something to return or something coming with the answer. What is it they're waiting for? There evidently was a party of them that went to find a new place to live. It's like I'm getting all kinds of overwhelming input from the corruption of their environment. It's failing very rapidly, and this group went somewhere, like a long way to find another place to live. This specific document tells an intriguing but hard to believe story that aliens existed on Mars 1 million years ago. There are only two reasons the U.S. military would conduct this remote viewing session. The first is to test the psychic process as they claimed. The second is to gain information about something which they do not know. This viewing session is reported to have been ordered by the CIA and was not an internally created experiment. So either the CIA knew that remote viewing was an effective way to gain authentic knowledge, or the CIA was testing remote viewing capabilities and had accurate knowledge of Mars 1 million years ago. I want this to sink in. By authenticating these documents, the U.S. military proved that either remote viewing works, or they somehow have knowledge of Mars 1 million years ago, potentially both. Remote viewers were also sent to Saturn's moon Titan and Antarctica. Given all these factors, and that funding for the project continued for 11 years after, it is not hard to deduce that psychic remote viewing indeed happened through Project Stargate. In fact, any other conclusion just feels silly by comparison. When Stargate Project was closed in 1995, it wasn't for the reasons we might think. While independent reviews were conducted by the American Institutes for Research, the agency itself had a long history of working with the U.S. military, sometimes towards dubious means. Even still, of the 4 researchers who conducted reviews, only one, Ray Hyman, whose debunking methods are already seen as questionable, found the data insignificant. The main reason stated for closing the project was, even if it could be demonstrated unequivocally that a paranormal phenomenon occurs under the conditions present in a laboratory paradigm, these conditions have limited applicability and utility for intelligence gathering operations. Put simply, remote viewing was not deemed useful for military operations. This statement may be truthful. Even the best viewers often provide vague information which may be hard to utilize in a small window of time. To be blunt, the disclosure only tells us that Stargate Project was closed in 1995. There is evidence of sister projects at the same time, and if Project Blue Book and MK Ultra have taught us anything, it is that secret operations tend to have limited time frames, whereby a successor project inherits their functional goals. These divisions keep individuals from knowing too much, while allowing continued growth without risk of complete detection. Documentation can later be released to show the projects closed down, and the findings can be downplayed, even if serious study is still being done. Does Project Stargate have a successor? There's no evidence for it, unfortunately. What there is evidence of is the U.S. military's covert study of psychic phenomena with explicit results pointing to psi's existence and ability to be taught within a scientific framework. Along with the history of civilian psi research, it must be concluded that psychic phenomena of at least one form exists. The main question is how. We will try to answer that when we discuss consciousness, but unfortunately it only gets more complicated. It turns out that covert operations were the easiest piece of the puzzle to fit. Thank you for watching. These videos take a long time and lots of effort to make. Please like and subscribe so I can grow and continue making quality content weekly. Be safe and be well.